Hey guys, today's picture book of the day is Max and Ruby and the Babysitting Squad by Rosemary Wells, published by Simon and Schuster. Ruby and her friend are setting up a new babysitting enterprise, but they don't want Max to come along. But when they get their first troublesome patron, an itty-bitty little skunk, will they be able to handle it without Max's help? I love the surprise twisting ending, and I hope you will too. Max and Ruby and the Babysitting Squad by Rosemary Wells. Max's sister Ruby made a big sign where everyone in town could see it. Going out, call the Babysitting Squad. Louise and Ruby will take charge. We are professional and bonded. We entertain, we safeguard. Call 555-6568. Max wanted to babysit too. No, Max, said Ruby. You're not professional. No way are you bonded, Max, said Louise. That night the telephone rang. Hello, said Ruby. It was Louise. We have our first job, said Louise. Mrs. Wardropper has a beauty appointment tomorrow at 9. She wants us to take care of Percy. Next morning, Louise came early. Ruby and Louise went to number 12 Hickory Lane. Max brought his earth mover equipment along. You'll have to play with those in the backyard, Max, said Ruby. Ding dong, went the warbler's doorbell. Percy opened the door in a skunk costume. Hi, said Ruby and Louise. We're the Babysitting Squad. Goodbye, said Percy. Say hello to Louise and Ruby, Percy, said Mrs. Warbler. I have skunk stink in my outer space squirter, said Percy. Mrs. Warbler gave Ruby and Louise the hairdresser's number in case of emergencies. Then she was out the door. We've brought lots of games, said Ruby to Percy. How about dominoes, asked Louise. Or let's build a castle, suggested Louise. Percy said, skunks don't play games. Then without another word, Percy vanished. Ruby and Louise looked for Percy behind the shades and in the cupboards. Was Percy hiding under the bed or behind the castle? They even looked for Percy in the shower. Where is he, asked Louise. Oh no, losing the baby on our first babysitting job, said Ruby. Here comes the skunk stink, said a voice from a heating vent. It was Percy. A cloud of vitamin mouthwash filled the air. He must be in the attic, said Ruby. Look out, I'm preparing spider juice vapor, said Percy. Percy, come down for chutes and ladders, said Louise. We can play the xylophone, suggested Ruby. Louise served up graham crackers with grape jelly. How about setting up the cowboy village, Percy, said Louise. Out of the heating vent puffed a cloud of heavenly man aftershave. Suddenly, from outdoors came a noise of rock crushing and electric zinging. Max, sawtooth dirt bucketer, and his rock crusher were clanging and banging around the backyard. Percy stood at the attic window, looking down below at the backyard. He saw it all. Want it, Percy yelled. Percy wanted to know how to work the rock crusher. Don't push the red button, said Ruby. But Percy did push the red button. It went into the sling and fling gear. Mrs. Warbler came home. Oh no, said Mrs. Warbler. I can't tell who's who. Max had an idea. Max turned on the sprinkler so that Mrs. Warbler would feel better. You've been listening to Max and Ruby and the Babysitting Squad by Rosemary Wells.